There's one question that comes up often when people try to understand narcissism. What is the number one narcissist trait? When we think of narcissists, we often picture arrogance, vanity, or manipulation. But underneath those surface behaviors lies something much deeper, a psychological core that defines narcissism in all its forms. Today, we'll explore that central trait through a psychological, emotional, and human lens. Understanding it can help us recognize narcissistic patterns, not only in others, but also in ourselves, so we can build healthier, more authentic relationships. According to the DSM-5, narcissistic personality disorder, NPD, is defined by a pervasive pattern of grandiosity, a constant need for admiration, and a lack of empathy. But these are symptoms, not the root. The number one trait that drives all others is a fragile sense of self-esteem that depends entirely on external validation. Every behavior, every word, every mask the narcissist wears is built to protect this unstable inner world. It's not confidence that drives them. It's insecurity wrapped in a shell of superiority. The narcissist's life is centered on maintaining a grandiose self-image. Otto Kernberg, one of the leading psychoanalysts in narcissism research, described this as a split self, one part that sees itself as perfect, admired, and special, and another that feels deeply inadequate and empty. The grandiose self acts as armor, shielding the vulnerable one from feelings of shame and rejection. The more fragile the inner self, the more the narcissist clings to the illusion of perfection, and this illusion becomes the foundation of their identity. This dependence on external validation means that a narcissist's self-worth fluctuates constantly. When admired or praised, they feel powerful, invincible, even euphoric. But when criticized, ignored, or compared unfavorably, they can experience what's called a narcissistic injury, a sudden collapse of their self-esteem, leading to rage, withdrawal, or even depression. As researcher Elsa Roningstam from Harvard Medical School explains, narcissists are hypersensitive to threats to their self-image because their identity isn't anchored internally. Their self-esteem exists only through the eyes of others. The grandiosity we see on the surface, the charm, the confidence, the charisma, is therefore a mask, not a sign of real strength. The number one narcissistic trait, then, could be described as emotional dependence disguised as independence. The narcissist claims to be self-sufficient, but in truth, they are addicted to admiration in the same way others might depend on substances or validation. Their self-worth is externally manufactured, and when the supply runs out, they experience emptiness, what Kernberg called the narcissistic void. To maintain this sense of superiority, narcissists develop elaborate coping mechanisms. One of the most common is projection, attributing their own flaws to others. If they feel insecure, they'll accuse you of being needy. If they feel threatened, they'll say you're jealous. This psychological defense allows them to avoid confronting their imperfections while keeping their idealized self intact. Another common mechanism is gaslighting, twisting reality so that others doubt their own perceptions. By destabilizing others' sense of truth, the narcissist reasserts control and reinforces their own illusion of being right. What's crucial to understand is that the narcissist doesn't lie just to manipulate others. They lie to protect themselves from their inner chaos. The number one trait of narcissism, the fragile ego, forces them to build a world of illusions where they can feel safe. In that world, they are always special, always right, always admired. The problem is, it's not real, and maintaining it costs them authenticity, intimacy, and peace. Heinz Kohut, the father of self-psychology, viewed narcissism not as evil, but as a developmental wound. He believed narcissists are people who never received consistent mirroring as children, meaning their parents didn't recognize or validate their emotions in a stable way. As a result, they learned to create an ideal self that could win attention and approval. This idealized self becomes their survival strategy. Every success, compliment, or conquest becomes a temporary fix for a deep emotional hunger that was never fed in childhood. This fragile ego also explains why narcissists struggle so much with empathy. It's not that they are incapable of understanding others. Many can intellectually grasp what someone feels, but emotionally, they cannot tolerate vulnerability, either their own or others. To empathize means to lower defenses, to connect from a place of equality, and that threatens their carefully constructed hierarchy. The narcissist's world is built on control. Empathy, by its nature, invites surrender. When this core trait dominates a romantic relationship, the pattern is often the same. At first, the narcissist idealizes their partner, seeing them as the perfect match who enhances their image. This phase, known as love bombing, feels intoxicating. But as soon as the partner shows independence or imperfections, the narcissist feels threatened. The admiration that once fed them turns into criticism in their eyes. They may begin to devalue the partner to restore the balance of power. The relationship becomes less about love and more about regulation, keeping their fragile ego stable at the expense of genuine connection. In friendships or work relationships, the same dynamic appears. The narcissist thrives in environments where they can be admired, but struggles in situations that require collaboration or humility. Any challenge to their status is experienced as humiliation. This is why narcissists may react disproportionately to feedback or competition. Underneath the arrogance lies a fragile sense of worth, always on the verge of collapsing. The paradox is that this very fragility can make the narcissist deeply human, if they can face it. The number one narcissistic trait is both their wound and their prison. But in therapy, when a narcissist begins to acknowledge the emptiness behind their grandiosity, something remarkable can happen. They start to discover that vulnerability isn't fatal, that being imperfect doesn't mean being unworthy, and that love isn't earned through performance, but through presence. Psychological treatment for narcissism often focuses on helping the person build a stable sense of self that doesn't depend entirely on external validation. Through approaches like psychodynamic therapy or schema therapy, individuals learn to identify their defenses, regulate their emotions, and tolerate shame without retreating into denial or rage. Progress is slow, but when the narcissist learns to sit with imperfection, empathy begins to grow. For those who interact with narcissists, whether partners, friends, or colleagues, understanding this central trait is empowering. It helps you stop personalizing their behavior, their arrogance, their defensiveness, their constant need for admiration. None of it is about you. It's about their fragile inner world, desperately trying to stay intact. Recognizing this allows you to set boundaries, stay grounded, and avoid being pulled into the emotional turbulence they create. So what is the number one narcissist trait? It's a fragile, externally dependent self-esteem, hidden beneath layers of confidence, charm, and control. It's the wound that fuels every lie, every manipulation, and every moment of grandiosity. But it's also the key to understanding the narcissist not as a monster, but as a deeply wounded human being. Understanding doesn't mean excusing. It means seeing clearly. The narcissist's mask may be dazzling, but behind it lies a person terrified of being ordinary, unseen, or unworthy. And perhaps that's the most important truth of all. Narcissists don't love themselves too much. They don't truly love themselves at all because they've never learned who they are without the mirror of admiration. Real healing, for them and for us, begins when we stop seeking worth in reflections and start finding it within. Because the opposite of narcissism isn't humility, it's authenticity. And authenticity is where love, empathy, and freedom finally begin.